Something has to be left until last in any given textbook, and it's quite often the optative when it comes to New Testament Greek. The optative is a mood, which means it sits alongside other moods you've learned, but it's so infrequent that it often gets missed off or only slipped in at the end of a book. That's what's happened in the textbooks I'm teaching, but it is worth pausing over because it does do various useful things when you're reading texts. So the moods you've met so far, and I've filled this in completely rather than doing it as I talk because I'm having problems with my stylus. The moods you've met so far. The indicative. This is used for normal statements and has the normal verb endings that you first learnt. The imperative is one way of giving a command, but we have covered a number of others. The subjunctive I've often described as a red flag. It's a watch out, pause over this, lengthened endings, look for the context and think about what's going on. Is it a purpose clause? Is it an indefinite clause? Is it some kind of jussive subjunctive, some kind of command? What is going on here? The infinitive would be translated as to do something very boldly and is what we would look up in an English dictionary as the default starting point for a verb. It gives you that default underlying action of a verb, and in Greek can often be used with the article to create a verbal noun, otherwise known as the gerund, the action of doing a verb. It's also used in what we call the complementary sense to complete a lot of verbs like I want to or it is possible to do something. The participle is the verbal adjective marked in English by ed or ing on the end in most cases. You'll have to look at separate sections on that for a decent summary. What about the optative? Well, first of all, its form. The form is very simple. For your purposes, it's only available in the present and the aorist. It's also then characterised by unexpected diphthongs, by which we mean a, I, oi. You're looking for that diphthong to show you that you've got an optative. You do occasionally see that one in contract verbs, like pleroi. But otherwise, if you get a diphthong in an ending, there's a very high likelihood that it's an optative because you don't get that kind of diphthong shape in other places in a verb. So form-wise, you're looking for a diphthong, but I wouldn't worry about learning complete paradigms. What does the optative do? It's sometimes described as a more remote or unreal subjunctive, a more subjunctive subjunctive, named after the Latin opto, which means I choose, and in Latin the optative is indeed subsumed into the subjunctive, and its uses are covered by that. So we are thinking alongside that mood idea of making things more hedged, but there are some very specific functions that the optative provides in New Testament Greek. The last page of Duff covers these, and these are also covered in Dobson. The two most common ones are wishes. Most famously, this comes up in genoito, me genoito. You've got 68 optatives, I think it is. I will double check again in the New Testament in general. So you're going to come across one roughly every 5 chapters. So they're not infrequent, but they are bunched. And if you look at genoito in particular, you're going to see lots of examples in Galatians. You also get more interesting uses of it like that. At the opening of 1 Peter, in the salutation, you get charis humin kai eirene plethea. May grace and peace be fulfilled for you. That's a very beautiful example because it's unnecessary in the salutation. There are plenty of good formulae for doing this, but it just nuances it and sets a linguistic register for the text right at the opening. So your first and probably most frequent use is going to be in phrases like genoito, me genoito, may it happen, or may it not happen, to give some kind of wish. You're also going to see it in indirect questions, or what Dobson calls hesitant questions. And a good example of this is Luke 15:26. Thanato te an ea tauta. He asked what these things might be. He asked what was going on. Any kind of question that is hedged by being made indirect or vague, or trying to save face by being more polite and using more indirect ways of expressing it, may well need the optative. They don't have to, but they may well. There is one more use, and this is much more common if you read outside of the New Testament, and that's as a part of a conditional. If you look back at the conditionals screencast, you'll find it's slipped in there. But there are a couple of examples. If you look at 1 Peter, again, where the optative e theloi, e kai paschoite, if you should wish and if you should suffer, the optative is being used there to give a very unlikely conditional. Notice it is 1 Peter, the same as the pleasant thea. I've only given you examples from 1 Peter and Luke so far. The optative is very much bunched in specific text and specific registers of text. So it is one of those markers of generally a higher register of Greek. So you're not going to see that many optatives. You are going to see approximately 1 every 5 chapters, but particularly bunched around certain formulae like genoito, me genoito. It's worth knowing it exists. You will see more of them if you read Greek outside of the New Testament, but it's not a mood that you need to worry about in any complete formal way, like, say, the subjunctive or the indicative.